really, what are adventure films? They really are a genre of films whose plots feature travel. And really, you have someone in this film who must leave their home or a comfortable place and go to faraway lands to fulfill a goal. So in that sense, when you are the protagonist in an adventure film, you're really moving out of your comfort zone and then going on to a discomfort area, which might be a growth zone. And at that time, you may not want it, but that's really the place you're going. So adventure films are really films whose plots feature travel and they involve discomfort. They're also a genre that revolves around conquests and explorations of the key character. So the key character is up to interesting things and doing a lot of exploration. Isn't that a lot about how we lead our lives anyway, right? So adventure films are a lot about conquests and explorations. So the purpose of the conquest could really be either to retrieve a person or a treasure, but often the main focus is really simply the pursuit of the unknown. Just chasing the unknown is what we want in a life of adventure. And so where did my adventure film start? Very early. My father was in the government service. He was in a transferable job. We traveled to a new place every few years, every 3 years. It was a new school and constant shuffling between North India and West India. So it was like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde existence from the point of view of personalities of people around in different parts of India. So really my film started there. And therefore, as I talk about my adventure film, let me introduce you to a concept. And the concept, and bear with me for a few minutes as I talk about this concept, the concept really is about the hero with 1,000 faces and the hero's journey, introduced by an author called Joseph Campbell from a book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And Joseph Campbell mapped the hero's journey in 3 phases: departure, initiation, and return. And for a moment, I want you to start imagining that you're the hero. While I'm talking today and I am talking about my life, each of us is a hero in our own life's journey. So this heroic journey that we undertake in our life has 3 major phases: departure, initiation, and return. So what are these phases and what are these 3 acts? So the first act, which is departure, in Campbell's word, is really starts with a call to adventure. So the hero is faced with something that really makes him begin his adventure, some trigger, some stimulus. This might be a problem or a challenge that he or she needs to overcome, something that really triggers the person and sets out a call for adventure, a call to adventure. And then there is this natural urge within all of us to refuse that call. So the hero attempts to refuse the adventure because he's afraid, he may feel unprepared or inadequate, or he may not want to sacrifice really the whole comfort that he has today in whatever he or she is doing. So there is a sense of inadequacy and under preparation at this stage. And then there is this whole aspect of, as Campbell talks about, meeting with the mentor. It could be a parent, it could be a friend, it could be a teacher who gives you advice, readies you for the journey ahead, acts as a mentor, giving you the wisdom to have the courage to take this on and move forward. So that's the first act. The second act is really initiation. And in this act, the first step is crossing the first threshold. This is when the hero leaves his actual ordinary world, the normal life that he or she is engaged with, and crosses that threshold into adventure. This step is almost inevitable, but it's a choice that the hero is making, and it's a door through which the hero must pass for the story to really begin. Not an easy choice, not an easy step. And then as he takes that step, he has all sorts of tests, all sorts of challenges, allies and enemies, and all of this during this time is what he comes face to face with are his foes, and he has to overcome all of that. So this is a time when during the approach road, setbacks occur. The hero keeps trying new approaches. The lesson in persistence. When he fails, he or she tries again, and the stakes are rising, and the real overall failure becomes less and less of an option. And through these ordeals, he learns there are near-life, near-death kind of situations. He faces or she faces her weaknesses and overcomes them. And this is really the journey that continues. And there is a reward then. The hero earns his reward, accomplishes a goal. And that's when the Act 3 starts, when the hero starts to return back to his ordinary life, in some ways integrating the lessons and the learnings through this large adventure journey and come back to his old life. Not easy to integrate those challenges and learnings, but that's really the challenge before him now. And so as a snapshot, what the hero does is in his ordinary world, there is a call to adventure. He or she takes that call, moves on to the special world where he crosses the threshold, she gets tested, approaches this whole innermost cave of challenges and tribulations and ordeals, comes out with a reward, and then comes back to the world. So look at your life as an adventure film through the above lens. And this is just a concept I want you to stay with for a bit. And just reflect that how does this connect to all of us? Why am I speaking about this, on a talk like this? And therefore, let me now begin to share the story of my adventure films. There are a few of them I would like to share. And in the act one, which is departure, really to unleash the unknown within myself, I have to leave my familiar beginnings. And therefore, where does that whole call happen? And where is the beginning? Where is the call from where the hero, which is in this case me, getting drawn forward into a new and terrifying path? So for me, I was in college in the early 80s in Mumbai, in an institute for chemical technology, one of the leading chemical engineering schools in India, in fact, all of Asia. And really in Mumbai words, there were only three things we were really interested in. There was the katta, which is the side of the road where you sit and gossip and chat. There was the cutting chai. This is the half chai that you can afford because that's the only amount of money you have, and time pass. These were the only three things that actually interested me. Education really came from there. Everything else was really time pass, right? And that really was the stage where I was in college. And then the first adventure film started in the second year, where during a break, we were about to go into holiday time and having a cutting chai in the canteen. Someone laid a challenge before us. A few of us were sitting down, and the first challenge was that, how far can you go on a bicycle? And I just blurted out, maybe I can go from Mumbai to Kanyakumari. I don't know where this came from. Two of my friends who were my good friends looked at me and said, are you crazy? I had not cycled much before that. And Mumbai to Kanyakumari is 1,800 kilometers. So my first adventure film was, how far can you go on a bicycle? So that's the one which I embarked upon. The second adventure film again happened a few years after that, after the successful completion of the first one. And this happened, the call to adventure came in for me while watching TV in the early 80s in the hostel. It was a community TV room. That time there was only Doordarshan. And remember, we didn't have the choice to change channels. There weren't too many channels to change. But then there was a regular fight to play the channel that you wanted. And suddenly an interview began to play, which I was listening to with a car rally driver from what was then one of the most famous car rallies in India, called the Himalayan Car Rally. And the car rally driver was being interviewed for this challenging rally, which was a huge motorsport event in the country. It was over 3,600 kilometers across most grueling terrain. And this driver, when asked that, what did you really miss about this rally? What would you have liked to be better? The only thing he said was, I wish I could go slower on this route. And I said, wow, what better way to go slower than to go on a bicycle? And so this was my second call to adventure. Can you retrace the Himalayan Car Rally on bicycles? So across the Himalayas, 3,600 kilometers of bicycling through tarmac, through dirt roads, through riverbeds, through forests, and going up to almost 10,200 feet to the Jalori Pass in height. All this in the North Indian summer of 40+ degree heat. I think you guys would also know about what this heat is all about. And three of us, me, my friend Rajiv, and my friend Abhay, we took this call to adventure and moved on. And the third adventure film that I want to talk about was really to become my own master. And this came up maybe about 15 years ago. I was having the appraisal with a senior leader, and one comment which he made stayed with me throughout. And yeah, this boss of mine asked me, why do you choose upstream always? Don't you know it's harder? Don't you know that you struggle? Why don't you just align with what the company does and just go flow with the stream? And then that's when I said, I don't want to wait till I retire and go with the flow. I want to create my own flow and be my own master. Little did I know then, of course, that when you become an entrepreneur, you're actually not at all your own master, and you're serving all other people, including your employees and investors. But nevertheless, I'm going ahead of my own story. So this was my third story. The third adventure film that I created was Be Your Own Master. And in this story, the question really was that, can you create a new company? Can you, as a company, survive? Then can you grow it? And then can you create a market position of eminence and create profitability? 90% of startups fail. So can you cross the Rubicon? And me and my partner Swami, was the call to adventure for us in this adventure film, to leave our established professional careers. I was at that time the chief marketing officer for HDFC Bank, and I decided to leave that and go into this journey fully conscious that this could be, a street laden with failure, may not reach the kind of success I was used to till then, but that was the call to adventure. Uh, and as we as we moved on, once the call of adventure comes in, as Campbell talks about it in the concept I spoke about earlier, there is doubt. The hero attempts to refuse the adventure because he's afraid or she's afraid. She feels unprepared, she feels inadequate. Before I started, there's this feeling, for example, in my cycling film, there was also the fear for physical safety, because we would set out by cycle, but we would just sleep on the roadside, maybe in a temple, maybe in a school. So there was physical fear about both safety and whether I could do it. Starting a new company, my third adventure film, was really about giving up HDFC Bank stock options, a bank which has returned over 2,400% returns to stock owners over the last decade. So here it was about financial worries. So like in Campbell's stories, me as the hero of my own story at this stage had these doubts. And then also there was a common theme. There was no resources. We never had the money we needed or what we thought we needed to complete any of the adventure films. For the Kanyakumari expedition, we didn't have the money. We didn't know how we will go forward. For the Himalayan rally, we neither had the money nor the bicycles because we needed gears to really go across to that height. When I started Hansa's Equity with my partner Swami, we didn't have the money, the experience, or even any benchmarks. Remember, in 2007, when we started that company, data science was not known. It's become the sexiest profession today, but that time it was unknown. So these were the common themes. There were no resources. And that is when, in Campbell's concept, there is a supernatural aid which comes to the hero's protection, and a mythical protagonist, which is me in this case, receives help from lots of people. And you encounter them, they give you advice, they ready you for the journey, they act as a mentor. And then I had the luck to have so many of them. In my cycling time, I had a Professor Tulpule who went out of his way to support me and tell me why what I'm doing is worthwhile and that I should go ahead and do this. We got sponsored by the World Wildlife Fund. That time it was called the World Wildlife Fund, by Mr. Wakankar, and they actually brought up the money for me to travel to Kanyakumari. And then when we went to cycle across the Himalayas, Mr. B.J. Krishnan of TI Cycles sponsored the entire expedition, saying, you're the first team in India to do this. Go do what your heart tells you need to do. And then when we started the Sequity, Hansa Group came as a strategic investor, and Shekhar and Sundar Swami supported us from the start to help us to grow. And even before I could start this company, an ex-boss was my mentor and guided me closely to take that call to jump and to actually initiate and to get to Act 2, which is the road of trials, where you survive the first test, where you actually go through the first series of challenges. And that's really where you begin the whole journey. So in my cycling journey, the Himalayan journey was across Himachal Pradesh, Garhwal, Kumaon, a total of almost 3,600 kilometers in the summer of 1986, with temperatures touching over 40 degrees. So that's the environment in which we started to cycle. And that's the environment in which we went up to a height of 10,200 feet, which was Jalori Pass. It was traumatic reaching there for us at that time, and it was difficult. But I think we made it. En route, we cycled across all kinds of terrain. There were tarmac roads, there were riverbeds, there were dirt roads, there was snow. And it was deeply satisfying when we reached a milestone. Like in this case, we reached the 10,200 feet height at Jalori Pass, and we had all the snow. But oftentimes when we were cycling, by evening, we had reached only halfway to our target destination. So a hard night would follow, and then that became the fuel for us to go faster and actually move ahead. This was a place called Shere Ghat. We climbed it in the scorching heat. It was 42 degrees centigrade that time, not easy at all. Heat led to dysentery, yet there was nowhere to run or hide. The only way was forward. Not cycling was not an option. And so one moved on. Crossing a riverbed meant a hard slog for miles. Getting stuck in the forest meant a hard night, and that fear gave energy to go on. So moving on, this Himalayan car rally really took the mickey out of us. We changed 14 tires, 18 tubes, and every so often, we did something which really broke the gears. And at one point, we had to actually go back from deep inside Himachal Pradesh, one of us had to go back to Delhi and import a new set of gears to allow us to continue the journey. TI Cycles was very kind to support us through that venture. And then, of course, the Act 3, which is return. Often the hero is given assistance. This is what Campbell says, that when you come in, come back, you're given a gentle hand guiding you back to a busy beginning point. And we had a lot of hands through our whole journey. Here was a mendicant, a sage, who, in this case, of course, it was unwanted advice, but he gave a lot of it to us. So we heard him and we went on. There was a lot of advice which nature gave us constantly, just egging us on. Just having a look at these Himalayan peaks was the way we motivated ourselves to move on. Nothing else was required. Water was always a burning need for us. We were always thirsty, but we needed to move fast. This particular shot was inside Corbett Park, the land of the tiger. We had to move out before dusk hit us. So a lot of interesting advice on the journey. And then that brings me back to the last act which the hero really plays out. And that's the act of really returning. However, in the hero's journey, the man that left with that call for adventure really gets marked by his whole journey. And the hero who comes back is forever a different figure with all those learnings that he or she has got. So what were those learnings? What were those principles and learnings that I would like to share with all of you? And one of the key tasks for the hero, for each of you as heroes in your own life journeys, is to assimilate this new knowledge that you learn from these adventure films that you write and play out for yourself, and then bring it back to your new world and your old world together. So the first principle for me, the first principle was that your emotional quotient and your intelligence quotient both are critical. We could not have done this without the ability to work as a team. There were terrible days while cycling when someone else would bolster our morale. When I started my company, me and Swami had to support each other constantly. Shekhar and Sundar Swami of Hansa Group constantly gave us motivation. So this couldn't have happened just because we had the smarts to build an analytical company. It needed more than that. And therefore, the knowledge about emotions is more important than the knowledge about just the gray cells. So that was the principle number one that I learned from this adventure films that I made. The second for me was really that despite EQ being more important than IQ, I think RQ trumps it all. Resilience quotient is the most critical piece. And I learned that through all these journeys. In fact, when I started Hansa's Equity, just the day before, my last day at HDFC Bank, one of my vendors in the bank, a trusted vendor, came to meet me and insisted on meeting me. So I was wondering why he wants to meet me. And finally, he came to meet me, and he had only one message to give me. He says, "You've been a senior person in this bank for very long. You're now stepping out to try and start a venture on your own. I want to tell you that there's an old Gujarati saying, कि 1000 दिन लगता है company बनाने में." And what that really means is that you will not make money for at least 1000 days. How prophetic he was, and how much of wisdom came through that. It needed the resilience to build a company, not just 1000 days. Actually, it took us a decade, right? And so resilience trumps everything else. Whenever you're in trouble, when I am in trouble, whenever I have to, in fact, even get an injection. Now, if I decide to, or if I get the opportunity to get a COVID jab in the coming days, whenever I get an injection, I think about Jaluri Pass, and that allows me to overcome that fear of injections that I've got. So resilience quotient is the key, was the second principle that I believe I learned. The third to me, which is really very, very, very important, is really the principle of A is greater than R. Ambition should be greater than resources. So most managers tend to work in environments where they like their ambition and their resources to be matched. But entrepreneurs always work in environments where their ambition is way beyond the resources that they've got. And this is a thought that you need to bring into the design of your life. Imagine if someone has to design an elephant is not 1,000 mice. It is very different. So bring the design of scale itself into your life, not just the idea of building it as you go along. Bring the principle of A greater than R into everything that you do. And the final principle, which for me is most critical, is true north is greater than everything else. While we were cycling, one very important true north variable for me was I will never abandon my team. Even if I had that dysentery, even if I felt sick, I will not abandon my team. The same thing happened when I started my own company, that I will ensure that salaries get paid. I will ensure that I become profitable and investors get an institution worth thinking about, worth believing in. So true north refers to the deeply held values, passions, and beliefs that you have. That is most critical, and you live and you die by this principle. And that's what helped me through all my adventure films. और पिक्चर अभी बाकी है, ये सिर्फ 3 पिक्चरें थी. Adventure film 4 continues. Hopefully more will come. Thank you. This is what I wanted to tell you about, and I know I've gone through like a Rajdhani train, but that's what I think the format allows me to. So thank you very much for your time and your attention.